Hi everybody. I'm running without a script again, but I wanted to give you my immediate impressions after completing the first full studio interview using the new studio and the stuff that I'm going to be talking to you about through the whole process. In general, I was really pretty excited by it. I was really impressed with how the Skype video came in. That was kind of exciting. It was really neat seeing the guest, Dr. John Warner of Argonne National Laboratories, right in my teleprompter screen and have him show up. We're able to do the side-by-side stuff, and that came out really nicely. I was a little bummed at about how confused I got between the different buttons and all the different pieces to control the thing. It clearly means I need a better control mechanism, because looking down at the keyboard and trying to remember which letter creates which effect is not good, while at the same time trying to keep track of a complex conversation and move that in a direction I want to take it. So I found that really confusing. I was really happy with how the green screen worked and how the background worked and how all that came together. I was fascinated by the depth of information we were able to get by having a really good sit-down conversation. So in terms of basic proof of concept, the ability to actually sit down with an expert on a topic and really drill down deeply into something to try to get an understanding, that part of it I was really excited by. I mean, that was kind of a dream in terms of starting when I started setting up the studio, and being able to actually see it happen was very, very neat. And you got to understand that when you start a project like this, or at least when I start a project like this, it's not a guarantee that it's actually going to make it. I'm pretty good at completing projects. So in my case, usually when I decide to kick off a project, I usually complete. But is it worth it? Is it worth the money? Is it worth the time? Is it worth the inconvenience, the amount I've put out other people to get their help? But when you see something like this, and you'll see the video, when you see something like this and you get to see the information we can get about something as important as voting, and how much at risk we are as a nation, and we're able to dive into it, and the production of the system is actually beginning to work, that gets really, really exciting. I mean, I'm kind of stoked by it, which is what you're probably noticing. The thing about it that I found sort of a challenge is just the basic issues of transitions and how long the guest is on the air, is visible, when he's visible side by side versus when I'm in the screen as a full screen and he's a little guy up in the corner on this side. As you can see, my hand's beginning to move off. Being able to be in control of exactly where I fit in the green screen background for this stuff is a bit of a challenge as well. So really, for me, some of it is the fact that I am not a professional broadcaster, that I am much more of an engineer and scientist and researcher than I am, an on-camera presence. Although I've done a tremendous amount as a guest and as a speaker, putting this together in a cohesive fashion is turning out to be kind of interesting. The other part that's really interesting is that this is live post-production. In other words, we're doing the entire post-production process live. I'm doing the whole production process live as the show is going on. Now this time I'm going to have to actually take it into Premiere and insert a couple things, because the intro didn't work. My actual intro piece where I introduce him and say hello didn't show up. Not quite sure why. And then there's a section where we lose 2 or 3 minutes while I get completely lost about the buttons, and I lose audio and a few other things. So I'm just going to cut that out and paste it in. And that's going to take a few extra minutes in terms of bringing it in, reconverting it back out, and so forth, that I don't want to do. The goal here, the net goal of the whole studio process, is going to be able to do an interview like the one with John, and to be able to do that interview, start it and stop it, and have it out of post-production as part of the interview. So the post-production process, all the lower thirds and the titling and all of that stuff happens dynamically while the program is going on. That's my goal. And I'll give you an example then. I'm going to turn off to the side over here, and I'm going to try to give you my little lower thirds. Whoops. I just made myself disappear. This is the interesting problem I'm having with these buttons in terms of controlling. That would be the guest, and presumably that's the lower thirds. So you see, the problem I'm having with this control system is I'm looking down and I'm having to find which of the buttons, and I was trying to remember whether it was 3, 4, or 5 drove certain things. And I even made a little template Let me show you that. I have this little template, and I'll actually show you how it works at some point. I made this template. It goes onto the keyboard like this. Let's see if I can bring it in here a little better. You can kind of see. But, you know, trying to manage that during the process of the video is really tough. So I've got another keyboard coming in that actually has special buttons that you can define specifically to be a control panel keyboard. And I think that was really the biggest mess up. The other part I wasn't thrilled with was sound. My sound didn't quite balance with his sound, and I'm not quite sure how to adjust that. I think my mixer needs a little bit of adjustment. I may tweak it again and see whether or not I can make that work before we complete. And I remember reading about a tool that will balance the sound of both parties after production, so I may look at running that. But again, my goal is to not have a lot of post-production. You know, I have so many things that I do in my daily life that to be able to do studio interviews and be able to do them as part of the normal process of ZDNet Government or DIY-IT or any of the other affiliations I have means that I can't say, okay, it's going to take me an hour to prep this thing, then it's going to take me 2 hours to pull it all together, and then it's going to take me a day to post-produce. So I really want to be able to make sure that I can do all of these little fancy post-production effects all as just part of the show. And, you know, that's where it's going to go. So for the first version, for the first day, for the really first live, real guest with real content, I'm thrilled. I'm really, really thrilled that this is proof of concept. I've got another interview scheduled for next week. That one should be pretty interesting as well. That's with, we're going to be talking about Android security, and that should be really neat. But the idea is really that this concept is workable. So now my project, what I'm documenting with you guys, what I'm writing with you guys is the early stages of it. You know, how to soundproof the room and the wall, and I'll talk about the lights and things like that. But the end game is I'm now in the process of tuning and tweaking, and you'll read about that, and I'll talk about that as time moves on. But for now, I just wanted to let you know kind of my impressions right as soon as I finished. I just finished watching the final piece of video that came out of this to get an impression, and I wanted to share that with you because I know those of you who are following along in the Skype Studio project are going to be kind of interesting. One of the things that's going to be interesting is I'm now going to have to figure out how to move off of Skype and into some other mediums as well, because to get into some government facilities, I can't use Skype. So to be able to talk to certain people I'd like to talk to, I have to use other video technologies. And so one of my projects in the next month or so is going to be how to do everything I'm doing, but not just broadcast in or broadcast out through Skype, but also be able to make this a little more generalized and be able to use certain other video technologies. And I will tell you about that on DIY-IT as well as that goes on. So that's it. My name is David Gewirtz. I will talk to you the next time I do one of these things. Have a great afternoon.